In the darkness, there is nothing but the great flapping of leathered wings. Drawing ever closer, 8 eyes glowing with the unclean essence of the restless dead. You're too late. The necromancers have completed their ritual. Now roll for initiative.
Today we're making a Flutter Flesh from the 5e compatible Tome of Beasts by Kobold Press. I chose this monster for a few reasons. One, because he's made out of Halloween novelties, which are cheaply available everywhere right now, and two, because this monster is cool and would be an easy project to knock out for y'all. Now you can use the Flutter Flesh as an end boss for an undead campaign, or maybe your players just want to fight a Harley-Davidson logo. Normally this is the point in the video where I'd show you what the price of the store-bought miniatures are, but there aren't any for this because it's a third-party product. But there is a pretty cool 3D mini you can print out on Thingiverse. It's not that close to the source art, but it's a neat piece nonetheless. But if you don't have a 3D printer or you don't want to wait on this to get printed, I'll show you a quick and affordable way to craft this miniature that'll go a lot faster than waiting on this to print out, I promise. Now it starts with a few of these novelty Halloween skulls. You can get these from a variety of different sources. They come as rings, party favors that are just skulls. I'm using some skeleton garland and some rings, but there's also these little beads that come in bags, sometimes with larger skulls, sometimes by themselves. You just have to shop around, but this shouldn't cost you more than $1 for a pack of 10 or more. Now I'm just trimming them up. Some of them have little loops for hanging up. Obviously the ring has something to go on your finger. Don't need any of that stuff. It's all coming off. And for the body itself, I could have used a bat, but I didn't see that in the art. It really looks constructed, and I didn't want to just glue these to a bat. It was a real simple way to do it. Of course, you can do that yourself. I'm using a Halloween spider that I'm just going to trim up, take the extra legs off of, because in the lore, it's supposed to be skin that's stretched over bones. You know, it's a constructed thing. It's not sort of a bat slapped together with human skulls. I don't know. I was just going a different direction. But I'm going to take these extra spider legs off, take the little spider mandibles off the front of the head. I'm going to trim the butt area down a little bit just to make room for some skulls. But all of this is going to hold my skulls in place. Gives me a starting area instead of just trying to build off of a cluster of skulls. I'm just going to add the skulls to this and then add the stretched skin once it's all put together. Just trimming this down nice and neatly. Now my flight base is going to be a can lid, which was cut with a safety can, of course. Don't want to slice your fingers with a regular can lid that you've cut off. And a very heavy paper clip. This is the largest paper clip I can get. You can probably find one that's similar. And just bending half of that up in the air to be our flight stand. And the other half getting glued to the can lid with E6000. And later reinforced with white PVA glue and sand. Now for plastic on plastic, I find that a hot glue gun is just perfect. So I'll be gluing my Halloween ring, skull ring, onto our plastic spider, just using my giant hot glue gun. And in moments, they're stuck together forever. And using that same hot glue gun, I start adding in the smaller skulls underneath on the spider's butt. It's already starting to take shape and looks pretty creepy, doesn't it? Getting spooked. Now to fix our flight stand, all you have to do is put a little E6000 on the end of that paper clip and then just sort of jam that up into the buttocks of your giant monster. Let him sit there for a while and he'll, when that cures, he'll be stuck on there as good as new. Or whatever. Now for the stretched over flesh, I'm going to use hot glue. I'm just putting a pretty thick bead up on the top and then working that back and forth with the toothpick to make very thin threads. Those things that you don't usually like when you're working with a hot glue gun. Here I'm trying to make those, as many as possible. Just going back and forth, making wispy little threads, which I will then thicken up with some PVA glue. While I'm waiting on that to dry, I might as well take care of the base. And for the base, we're just putting some PVA glue onto our can lid, adding some craft sand. For the rocks, I used a little bit of a broken cork And I held that in place with some E6000 as well. The rocks on our base. Take the whole thing outside and finish up this can of white spray primer. See, it's giving me a little bit of a hard time here because we're getting near the end of it. I'm going to have to pick up some more pretty soon. Now I'm going with the white because it's obviously a creature that's mostly bone, and instead of working up from a darker color, I think I'm just going to stain it with the sepia tone to begin with. Gives a pretty good bone effect when you do. And this is Games Workshop sepia wash. Just getting that on everything. Being quite generous with it. Now, the way I have the tripod set up isn't ideal, so I've got my hand in the shot more often than I'd like, so you can't quite see the way I'm painting as well as I'd like you to. I won't make this mistake again, but just pretend I'm doing a magic trick, like a really bad one. Now, using a couple of new reds I hadn't played with before. The first one was a little too orange, but the second one is really doing the job here. Very nice, very gory looking. Really getting that whole sort of veins and viscera and torn muscle, stretch over bone look down. And I've even got some red ink that came with a nice Vallejo, the other set I got off of Amazon for a really reasonable price. Once I've got all that blood in there and the darkness, I will give it a dry brush with a flesh tone, because this is supposed to be stretched skin. And I want there to be some other tissues in there, aside from just the red. Although, you could leave it just red. Looks pretty effective, doesn't it? Now I want to add a little black to the eyes to really make them pop. Of course, I will add a little white to the center of the eye to be sort of a eldritch glow of dark magic animating this whole thing. And I'm going to lean into the sort of heavy metal album cover look and give our largest skull a bit of an Alice Cooper eye effect. Something, you know, from the cartoon Overlord, the anime, for those of you who watch it. I think it's pretty effective because, to be fair, that top skull just doesn't have a very anatomic look anyway, so may as well lean into the fantasy aspect of it. Just used a brown for the base and then dry brushed it with a little Turner yellow. It's always one of my favorite combinations. And slate gray for the rocks, and then just a regular gray dry brushed on top of the rocks to make them stand out a little bit. That's about it, guys. There was not a whole lot of painting to this. This whole assembly went together very quickly. Very last touch, I'm going to add a little white PVA glue to the top of the base and throw a little bit of green flock onto it, just to add a little bit of plant matter with our sand and soil and rock. Yeah, that looks pretty great, huh? Just did a little flight stand part in white. As you can see, it's quite a big monster, quite an impressive looking creature. Pretty freaky looking. Pretty happy with how this turned out. Dirt cheap. All stuff was under $1. Sit around from Halloween. Well, I got you here. Why don't I show you what I've been doing with HeroClix lately. Not painting and converting them so much, just rebasing a whole bunch for games like Call of Cthulhu, X-Files, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, any kind of modern investigatory game. You know, not a supers game, not a soldiers game, just sort of gangsters and maybe hedge wizards, that kind of stuff. Think Dresden Files, things like that. Just been going through my collection, sorting them. And the best thing about all these guys is they don't really need a repaint. Yeah, the paint jobs aren't very good, but they're fine for pre-painted miniatures. And there just aren't a lot of these pre-paints available for those types of games. It's a pretty limited selection, and HeroClix is a great source, but I think a lot of people who play that stuff might not be willing to sift through all the different HeroClix to get the ones they need. That's where I come in, and I'm just putting this up on eBay for anybody who's interested in playing those types of games. I've got 101 here, broken into lots of 10. There's one lot of 11, and I'm just letting them go for about $14.99 with free shipping. That's something you're interested in. It's a great way to support the channel. Just grab up a bunch of gangsters, guys in suits, businessmen, all kinds of modern women and stuff as well. Well, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Miniature Mashup. Sorry I couldn't make it as funny as I'd like. There's just not a lot of funny things to say about a skull with wings. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider donating to my GoFundMe. The link for that's in the description below. Come check us out on Facebook. It's a great way to see pictures of this project or projects of the past and to say hey. As always, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.